Alright, so I'm here today with Tim Eian. He's the building designer with TE Studio. Hi. Good to have you here, Tim.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tim, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you do and what you're bringing to our project.
Absolutely. Tim Eian with TE Studio. I just started a firm that'll specialize in passive house design. That is a standard that's coming to the US from Europe. It's just in the process of being established. There's a Passive House Institute newly established in the US since last November. And I'm currently being certified as a passive house designer here in the United States.
And so is the passive house standard, is that easily compared to, say, the Minnesota Green Star or Lead for Homes standard? It's kind of on a par.
It compares in the sense that it is another building standard with requirements, and it's a certified standard. Where it's different is that it is an energy consumption standard. It is based on the energy consumption per square foot of livable space and year, and also there's a limit. It puts a cap on the primary energy use of the building in any given year. And so it doesn't look at maybe where construction materials are coming from, VOCs, things that LEED or maybe Minnesota Green Star would cover. It's much more concerned with just the efficiency of the building, the performance of the building. So I would actually recommend using those standards in conjunction, especially the Minnesota Green Star or the LEED, because they cover different things and they work really well in conjunction if you're concerned with the environment, the health of the people living in a building, and the performance of the building. Bill and I have been in talks about passive house design for a while. As I've been going to seminars about it, I've been reporting back to him, and he's very much interested in the idea and ultimately asked me to come out and take a look at what's being done here and basically put that into perspective with passive house design. I've been involved in an effort called the Appleseed House, which is a nonprofit volunteer effort to create sustainable low-income housing for North Minneapolis. And Bill has been hosting the group in his office from day one, and so I met Bill in his office through this effort. The interesting thing is that the roots for this movement are actually in the United States. Early on, people like William Shercliffe, who interestingly enough also came from the University of Illinois in Urbana, were experimenting with super insulated shells. And this is probably in the early to mid 70s. And their efforts, while to a certain extent successful, usually failed because window technology wasn't up to par, solar technology was not up to par. So they could insulate a building fairly well, but they were very limited with the resources they had, the products, the materials to make it a really good building. The Germans, Wolfgang Feist in particular, who was sort of the founder, one of the co-founders of the Passive House Design Program, picked up on those movements here and found that very interesting, and has since in Germany perfected that mostly through a university effort. They are the ones, the institute is connected to the university, they are the ones who put out the energy modeling software for the standard. At this point in Europe, there are about 6,000 homes built to that standard all across Europe. There have been pilot programs to spread it out across Europe. So we're looking at here in the United States, I usually refer to it as sort of a version 2 of a version 1 that's been tried and tested for about 17 years now in Europe. So we have a very large database of projects to go back to, building details to go back to, and a strong institute that delivers great resources for both the design and then the certification also. We're basically at a point right now where the only people who did do it in the past and could have done it were the people who brought the institute here, who had direct ties to the German institute. The first buildings were actually certified by the German institute directly because it was the only authority that existed at that time. Now we're at a point where we can get certified here in the US by the US Institute.
If you have a passive house, what are some of the key points? What are the advantages? What are you seeing? What are you seeing in your energy costs and advantages to the environment?
The biggest advantage is certainly the airtight envelope with lots of insulation in it. And what that does is, well, it covers about 3 points. It cuts back on your utility bill, so it's financially interesting. It provides great comfort because all the interior surfaces are near room temperature, and that's something that to the human body, radiant heat loss or heat gain makes you feel very uncomfortable. So if those temperatures are similar to the room temperatures. It's a very comfortable climate. And then there's a health aspect to it as well. Just because of the way these homes are constructed, you end up with an energy exchange, heat exchanger, which forces fresh air into the building on a regular basis. You get an air exchange about every 3 hours that's prescribed, and that air is filtered. So you end up with very healthy, filtered, tempered air on the inside. And last but not least, for the environment, obviously you use less energy, so there's a huge environmental benefit. It is not prescribed by the standard that you have to use renewables, but it becomes much more attainable. So it's very easy to go carbon neutral or become a net positive, actually an energy producer with these buildings. Energy loads are so much reduced in a passive house. You do away with the traditional heating and cooling systems almost altogether. The loads are so insignificant on a standard, let's say 1800 square foot home, a smaller home. The heating loads are comparable to the output of a hairdryer, literally. In the US, the average housing stock is estimated to consume about 170, 180 kilowatt hours per square meter and year. To pass a passive house design standard, you have to be at 15 or lower. So it basically suggests energy savings of about 90%. I've been actually really impressed with what I saw, how the building envelope is constructed. Since SIPs have been used and then interior fur framing with additional insulation is being used, that's actually a wall section that would very likely be suitable for passive house design. So I saw that today, and I'm excited to see that somebody's already building with all these principles in mind.